Okay, so we have two remaining lectures on Congress, and looking at them both, I feel like this is the more boring lecture of the two. So guess what? I'm gonna put it online, so that you're not as bored in class. So today's lecture is all about the committee system, and of course, committees are those groups within Congress, made up of congressmen, in which bills must pass in order to get onto the floor and be debated. And as we know, most bills tend to die in committee. So let's take a closer look at the committee system. Lots of detail today, maybe a little too much information. Uh, so I might just brush over some things and not go into super depth about them. So here we go. All right. So the real work in Congress is done in committees. All right. So bills getting passed and all that, really by the time it gets to the floor, the main work has already been done. In terms of the writing and the editing and the looking closely at bills, most of that's already been done. It's not really happening on the floor. It's happening in committee. All right. Before a bill even reaches the floor, it must pass through committee. Um, we talked about this in class. There's an order to things in Congress, be it in the Senate or in the House, that a bill needs to go through committee before it can reach the floor. The only time that this isn't going to happen is if the House votes with a discharge position. Remember we learned about discharge position the other day? If they vote, hey, this bill is stuck in committee and we want to hear it. Um, Senate committees, however, this is worth noting, Senate committees lack the power to keep bills from reaching the floor. So either way, bill needs to go through committee before it reaches the floor. All right, what does a committee do? They analyze legislation, they read the law, they decide whether it's worthy or not. They might call experts to come testify. They conduct investigations of the executive branch. All right, so they take a look at the president and make sure that he's following the law. With Nixon, they would invest Watergate. With Clinton, they would invest his relationship and his perjury about Monica Lewinsky. With Obama, they would investigate whether he knew about a certain embassy being attacked and covered up, what he was doing there or what he knew or when he knew it. So they keep the president in line and investigate and make sure he's following the law. By the way, you'll notice today that the video of me talking is missing. That's because Aaron says that my big head blocks the text. So Aaron, just for you, I've decided to not put myself in the video. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. What else do committees do? They conduct oversight of executive branch agencies. So, example of this would be Department of Homeland Security or Department of Education. They also investigate to make sure that those agencies are doing what they're supposed to be doing and not breaking the law. Because those agencies have a tremendous amount of power, as we're going to learn in the upcoming unit on the bureaucracy. All right, how do these people in committees get selected? How do these people in committees get selected? By the way, today I'm obviously going very fast because this is an online video. Please make liberal use of the pause button. All right. If you're a congressman and you're elected and you want to keep getting reelected, there is a strong desire to get on the right committee. All right. If you're on the right committee, then you can really increase your power and prestige and importance. It's kind of like in school, if you're on ASB, you have more power. It's the same thing in Congress. If you're on a committee and if you have a strong position in that committee, you have more power, and thus you're more likely to get reelected. You're more likely to have more power within the Congress. People are going to want to talk to you to get stuff done. All right, this is fun. Members are assigned to committees by either the Committee on Committees, that's awesome, set up by the Republicans, or the Steering and Policy Committee, set up by the Democrats. So these two committees meet separate of each other, and they decide who will be assigned to what committee. And we already know that the breakdown of the committees will be based on party breakdown of the House or the Senate. So if the House is 60% Republican, 60% of committees will be Republican, and those Republicans will have been selected in their own little private committee on committees. That's just awesome. Planning to plan. Whichever party has a majority in the House will have a majority in each committee. I just said that. The committee chairman is always going to belong to the majority party. So committee chairman is like the president of the committee. They're always going to belong to a majority party. And then there's a title called the ranking member, and a ranking member will belong to the minority party. So today in the House, we know that the Republicans are in charge in 2013. So every committee chairman is a Republican, and every ranking member is a Democrat. All right. How are you selected if you are the committee chairman or kind of the president of the committee? Well, it's important to mention that the power of this chairman is very high, very substantial. All right, they can set the committee agenda. They decide what bills they're going to hear. They hire the staff around them to advise. They get to assign membership on subcommittees. So within committee B, within committee A, there might be committees 1, 2, and 3 that are like below, like subcommittees, and the committee chairman will get to select who goes on those subcommittees. Again, this is very specific. I understand that memorizing all this could be quite difficult, but I'm just giving you the information. Do with it what you will. All right. They also get jurisdiction over subcommittees. Basically, they're in charge of the subcommittees as well and the decisions that they make. All right. Again, how are chairmen selected? Well, chairmen are selected by a secret ballot in the party caucuses or conferences of the party at the beginning of the term. So it's January, and the House is just meeting for the first time. The Republicans and the Democrats separately will have their own little caucuses. They'll have a secret ballot. Excuse me for a second. I got some Skittles in my throat. Ooh. They're going to have a secret ballot, but generally, look at the bold here. Generally, they're going to vote based on seniority. Now, seniority does not mean that the oldest guy will become the committee chairman. What it actually means is that the person that served on that committee the longest, and they belong to the majority party, will become the chairman. Okay, you follow me? So if Paul Ryan is, he's a young guy, I don't know what he is, like 40, but if he served 10 years on the committee for finance, he's going to become the committee chairman? Probably. I mean, they have to pass this secret ballot, but generally speaking, it's the member with the most seniority in the majority party, and seniority is how long they served on that committee. All right, it's worth noting that Congress has set some term limits. At least, if I remember correctly, this only applies to the Republicans. I gotta pause the video because this Skittle is stuck in my throat. Whew. Taste the rainbow, huh? Okay. It's worth noting that they did. I think this only applied to the Republicans, but they imposed term limits on chairmen so that they could only be in charge for 6 years. This took effect in 2001. It was one of Newt Gingrich's reforms, but only applied to the Republican House and Senate, I think. All right, you see another bold thing here. So this is off of a test. What is good about the seniority system? What's good about the seniority system? Well, you're picking the person with the most experience on that committee, so that's a good thing. It provides stability so that you don't end up with some new guy who's never even been on the committee and they're the chairman. It provides expertise, and look, that's bold. So maybe you want to highlight that in your paper. The people in charge will have expertise in that area. And it reduces infighting among those who would be rivals for chairman. So there's less fighting amongst the new guy versus the old guy for who would be in charge as the chairman. What's bad about the seniority system? Well, it increases influence of one-party states, and it decreases influence of competitive states. All right. Important standing committees. Standing committees are the permanent committees of Congress. All right. A standing committee is one that's going to be there forever, essentially. And they have legislative, investigative, and oversight powers. To be on this committee means you have power and prestige in the House and Senate. All right, there are different types of standing committees. There's authorizing committees that allow for the creation of federal programs, creating a new program for the government. There are appropriation committees, which provide funding for federal programs. Remember, appropriations, think money. All right, and there are revenue and budget standing committees. They raise money for federal programs. Very specific here. Just have a general idea that a standing committee is one that lasts forever. What authorizing means, appropriation means, and revenue and budget means. Okay. Let's talk about committees specific to the House. All right, we already know the most powerful committee in the House. Do you remember what it is? The most powerful committee in the House. They decide on all the bills. They're like the traffic cop, and they decide what's actually going to be talked about. The most powerful committee in the House is the Rules Committee. All right, they set the calendar. They're like the traffic cop. They decide how long that a bill is going to be talked about. This is only in the House. This does not exist in the Senate. First time I'm mentioning it is the Ways and Means Committee, and this is bold and this is important, and this is a committee you should know. They deal with tax bills. And then there's the Appropriations Committee that deal with spending bills. To be on any of these committees is to have significant power in the House of Representatives. Okay? So, Ways and Means, tax, increasing taxes on the American people. Appropriations, spending money. All right, spending money that you've raised in taxes or that you've borrowed from China. What? Burned. Okay. What do the appropriations do? They authorization bill allows for money to be spent. An appropriation bill allows for actual funding for the program. I talked about this already last class. Authorization allows for money. Appropriation actually gives the money. A lot of times we see earmarks attached to these bills, and we've talked about earmarks, but I still have kids asking me, what's an earmark? And I'm like, yikes, you should know that. An earmark is a special project set aside by members to benefit home districts or states. This is like, I want to build a museum for farmers in Eastvale, and we'll call it the Robinson Museum of Farmers. And it helps you get benefits back in your district, but it's not so good in terms of the budget and spending American tax dollars for something that's kind of perhaps wasteful. We've seen a major rise of this in recent years. I think, 50 years ago, not so much. 20 years ago, increasing a ton. Today, it's out of control. Talk about committees specific to the House. Excuse me. Talk about committees specific to the Senate. There's the Finance Committee. You notice that although these committees go back to the House, the Ways and Means for the House deals with taxes. And in the Senate, it's called the Finance Committee. So small little differences between the two houses. So the Finance Committee in the Senate deals with tax bills. The Appropriations deals with spending bills. That sounds about right. That sounds familiar. Something unique to the Senate, pretty much anytime we talk about dealing with other countries, like international affairs and that type of thing, we're talking about the Senate. Okay, so in the Senate, there's a committee called Foreign Relations. Foreign means outside this country. So a very prestigious committee to be on. Remember, the Senate has a large role in foreign affairs, much larger than the House, because it's in the Constitution. Okay, if the president signs a treaty, the Senate has to approve it. If the president picks an ambassador for a country, the Senate has to approve it. This is in the Constitution. So the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate is only in the Senate. And then there's the Senate Judiciary Committee, and they review judges that the president has nominated. All right. Of course, judges have life terms, and for a president to be able to assign a judge, now they assign more than just a Supreme Court judges. We'll learn later they assign federal judges all over the country. But for a president to have this power is a tremendous amount of power, and in this committee, they really scrutinize the people that are picked and perhaps hold up the nominations. So we've seen major delays under Clinton that lasted many months, and under Obama, I've talked about probably more than ever, we've seen delays, and that's why the Senate just voted to get rid of the filibuster when it comes to federal judicial nominees that are not of the Supreme Court. So some new information right there. All right, we're almost getting done. Member conference committee? Do you remember what a conference committee's job is? Do you remember? Come on, my little Cheeto. Do you remember? A conference committee is the committee that looks at a bill that has passed the House and the Senate, and it reconciles them together because sometimes there's going to be differences. So it's a temporary committee. That means it's changing all the time. That's comprised of members from both houses, Senate members and House members. All right, and they develop compromise language on a bill when the House and Senate have passed different versions. Check this out. I found this interesting. Only 10% of the time are the bills different between the House and the Senate. So they only really need to look at these bills 10% of the time, which is less than I would have guessed. After a conference committee reads a bill, they send it back to the House. You're not allowed to make any more changes, and they need to vote on it again. The bill generally tends to pass this time that it's shot back. All right. This committee is very powerful. The power of these committees is such that they're often called the third house of Congress. I think I had that on the other day's notes. What other types of committees are there? There are select committees. They're appointed by a house for a limited temporary purpose. This could happen in the Senate or the House. So appointed by a house, meaning the House or the Senate. But for a temporary purpose, like I looked this up, one example, why don't you write in your paper, one example of a select committee that was temporary was one to study global warming. And it was created by Democrats under Bush, and it lasted, halfway through Obama until the Republicans got nominated into power in the House, and then they immediately voted to get rid of it. So that shows you like how they're temporary. Committee on Global Warming, a select committee, created and gotten rid of, pretty much for political reasons. And then there are joint committees, and a joint committee just means that it's made up of members from both houses for the same thing, for a temporary purpose. So a temporary committee with Senate and House members on the same thing. Oh, we're done. We're done. We're done. We're done. Now would be a great time to show off my beautiful laptop. Look at the lovely background there. That's Yellowstone National Park. I highly encourage you guys to travel there. Lovely place. I've been there. I stood right there. It's quite lovely. All right. This is Windows 8. Ooh, Windows 8. Isn't it lovely? Okay. All right. Thanks for wasting 17 minutes and 40 seconds with me. Have a lovely day.